The former city attorney, James Baker, for the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute's Oral History Project. I'm Dr. Horace Huntley. We're presently at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. Today is July 29th, 1998. Attorney Baker, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come and sit with us, and welcome to the Institute.
I'm glad, happy to do it.
Just want to ask you about background, first of all. Tell me a bit about, first of all, are you originally from Birmingham?
No, I was born in Ardmore, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia.
Okay. And your parents, what about your mother and father? Were they originally from Pennsylvania?
No. My mother was from Mississippi, and my father was from North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Incidentally, he died at 103. He was born a slave. Remember his Emancipation Proclamation very well.
Oh, was that right? He must have told you some grand stories.
He did indeed.
Yes. That, you got me off track now, because now you're talking about history. That's great. Tell me, give me just one of the stories that he may have told you about those days during the Reconstruction period. I assume he must have been a young man.
Oh, yes, he was a child, about 9 or 10 at the time of emancipation.
Right.
That's his most vivid memory.
Is that right?
When the news got to his place in North Carolina, near a town, Norlina, right near the Virginia border, the celebration of the slaves on the plantations.
Yeah.
That he remembers.
Oh,
Very
yeah,
vividly.
yeah.
Speaks of it all.
Yeah, and see, that's a great story, because that's what was happening all over the South. And then, of course, we celebrate Juneteenth from that Texas emancipation. But, you can just imagine, you think about that, and you just get chills, because you just try to imagine what would have been like to have been there. And you had a person that was there that could share that with you. Just tell me a bit about your parents' education.
Well, my mother was a high school graduate. Unfortunately, she died at my childbirth.
Oh, okay.
So I never, of course, knew her.
Okay.
And I was literally raised by one of her sisters, whose name I took, Baker.
Oh, okay.
My family name was Davis.
Oh.
In those days, I guess they didn't go about formal adoption,
Yeah.
but I knew her all my life as mother.
As your mother, right. So, but she lived in Ardmore as well.
Yes.
And she came up from North Carolina?
From Mississippi.
From Mississippi?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And your father from North Carolina?
Yes.
Okay. What kind of work did she do? Your
My
aunt?
mother?
Your aunt?
Yes.
The one that-
My aunt mother.
Yes.
Yes. She was a domestic servant.
Okay.
The area in which I lived, born outside of Florida, it was the famous or infamous Main Line.
Oh, okay.
There was a great number of wealthy people out there.
Right. And was she married?
Yes, but she divorced.
Oh, okay. Now, your father, what kind of work did he do?
He was a landscape gardener. But interestingly enough, his first occupation as a very young fellow, he moved from North Carolina to Virginia, was jockeys, which is somewhat of an irony. Today you see no black jockeys.
That's right.
That in his time, nearly all of the jockeys
Everybody, that's right. That's right.
were black.
Mm-hmm.
But he trained some horses for a wealthy family down in Virginia, and they moved to the main line to Ardmore, really right next door, and he came with them.
Oh, okay.
And from then on until he was quite a guy. He did landscape gardening on their estate and stuff, keeping the grass, hedges, and did that until he was in his early 90s.
Is that right? Now, he was in North Carolina. Did your family, they own property? Did his family own property?
I don't.
You don't? No.
he came to Virginia at a very young age. I think, as best we can guess, he was about 15 or 16.
Oh, I see.
And he was a jockey.
Okay.
And
So he-
racehorse.
Right, so actually the racehorse is what brought him
Yes.
on to Ardmore.
Yes.
Now, your early days, do you remember when you first started the school?
Oh, yeah.
What school did you attend?
The Ardmore Elementary School.
Ardmore Elementary School. What kind of experience was that? Now, you're talking about a northern area, and I'm assuming you're talking about an integrated education
Yes.
at that time.
Yes.
Which of course would have been different than the southern education that you would have gotten if you had been in North Carolina. What are your memories of those early days of education?
Well, they're very good. When I was a young kid in grammar school, there weren't a lot of blacks in the area. It was very largely a white school.
Right.
But I was I've always been impressed with the teaching that I got in that elementary school, and particularly in the township high school, which I later went to.
Right.
That was Lower Marion High School.
Were you active in extracurricular activities?
In high school?
Yes, in high school.
Yes. Played football, believe it or not,
Okay.
at my size. But, and belonged to a number of clubs. I was, in a senior year, the editor of the sport page section of high school
Right.
newspaper.
Yes. And what did you do after high school?
I went to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, about 45 miles from Philadelphia.
Right. Yes. And Lincoln University now is a black institution.
Yes. Yes.
Why did you decide to go to Lincoln?
Well, first thing, it was not too far from home.
Yeah.
And second, there was a fellow who we all admired in my town, a black fellow, Jack Smith, who went to Lincoln. And he'd talk Lincoln to me
Yeah.
all the time when he'd come home.
Right.
He lived across the street from us. So I became very impressed. And as I later learned the history of Lincoln, my pride was certainly justified.
There were, well, many very noted people that went to Lincoln.
Indeed.
Because,
I mean, for instance, in the 30s, they were colleagues in college together, a small school. The capacity was about 300 students. And then Ezekiel, who I got to know very well, first president of Nigeria,
yes.
Thurgood Marshall, Langston Hughes were all colleagues in a small black school. And I say black school incident, I guess there weren't any years that I was in Lincoln that there weren't 2 or 3 whites there.
Right.
Otherwise,
Right. And Kwame Nkrumah went to
he
Lincoln.
was there same time I was.
Did you know? Yes.
Knew him quite well. His name was Francis then, but
That's right.
became Kwame later on.
Right. And after your experience at Lincoln, what did you do there?
I went to law school at Cornell. That was largely a result. There was a famous All-American football player, Bud Holland, who's now dead, unfortunately. But one of Bud's first jobs after he finished Cornell, he was an All-American football player, was Lincoln. He taught sociology, and he was the assistant football coach. So, like my friend Jack Smith talking Lincoln, he taught Cornell.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel there.
Right. Did you play football in college?
In
At Lincoln?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
What did you play? What positions did you play?
Well, in those days, we didn't have, I was a quarterback in the sense that I called the signal. I was actually the tailback.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't the greatest runner in the world. Does the name Monty Irvin ring a bell to
Oh,
you?
sure, absolutely.
Well, Monty came my sophomore year, and he was our star running back
Oh, okay.
on that team.
All right. You were the signal caller.
Yes, and the passer.
And the passer. Yeah, okay, that's great. Let me digress just a bit. Now you knew Nkrumah, you knew several other people. Tell me what What was Clemon like?
I always thought he was a rather strange fellow. He was a bit ahead of me. In fact, I think he had either finished the college, Lincoln had a seminary.
Right.
He was in the seminary either my first year or the year I got there, I forgot which.
I see. What about Ziegler?
Well, of course, he was long before me,
All right.
but I had the distinct pleasure of getting to meet him and know him when I was later went to Africa.
Right,
Which
yeah.
I'll tell you about.
Right. Now, you finished Cornell. Did you go back to Ardmore?
Went back to Ardmore, and soon thereafter I moved to Philadelphia for business reasons.
Okay.
And I practiced law there.
Yeah. Were there any memorable cases in Philadelphia that you were involved with?
Yes, several. One of the most famous, or maybe infamous, the way it turned out, was the Boulevard Pools case up on Roosevelt Boulevard in Philadelphia. This is long before freeways. That's how you went to New York from Philadelphia.
Okay.
It was this big public pool, public. in the
Swimming
sense
pool?
that- Yeah, swimming pool.
Yeah.
Public in the sense that if you weren't black, you would pay $1 to swim there. And interestingly, some of Father Divine, do you remember him?
Oh, absolutely.
Cohorts, a couple of them went up there to swim and they wouldn't let them. And I started a lawsuit, compelled to admit blacks. And that case went all the way to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania,
Is that right?
but we won it.
Now, were you practicing alone or were you with a firm?
Well, we didn't have a firm, we had an association, pretty close to a firm. We were close knit.
Right.
6 lawyers at that time,
Okay.
who all shared all his expenses and that sort of thing.
Were you the only black lawyer?
No, all black.
All black.
Yes.
Okay, in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Yeah. And when you won that case, did that effectively desegregate the pool?
They did indeed, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I always wonder whether it's still open, I don't know.
Yes. So how long did you practice in Philadelphia?
From 1948 until 1962. That was the beginning of the massive movement in West Africa for independence.
Right, that's right.
Nigeria, Ghana.
Right, yeah.
Africa, Lincoln had a long tradition of educating Africans.
That's right.
We mentioned
Yes.
both the Ezekiel and Clemon
Right.
were at Lincoln. And when this came about, I got a real desire to go to West Africa. Fortunately, one of my teachers at Lincoln, John Davis, taught political science, very erudite fellow, had formed, I think largely on the aegis of the Ford Foundation, the American Society of African Culture. Its aim was, and its purpose was that as the African countries became independent, they needed to know as well as the blacks in our country that we weren't all just tribesmen, illiterate, etc. That there was a history and a culture, black culture, which existed throughout the world. And they opened an office in Lagos, Nigeria. And that's when I called John Davis and asked him, did he have an opening for me? He said, glad to have you. He had taught me at Lincoln.
Right. So this was done in '62?
Yeah. Yes, just at the eve of the great civil rights movement here.
Right. The organization started in '62, or did they just simply expand it to Lagos in '62?
No, it was headquartered in New York. It started in '61.
Okay.
Sort of contemporaneous with the great move for independence in
Yeah.
West Africa.
What then was the transition like for you from the East Coast of the United States to the West Coast of Africa?
Well, it's great. I've often told my wife and many others that if that job had lasted, I probably never would have come back to this country. But it ultimately folded. But
So you were actually there in, from 62 to 67 or so?
Yes.
So during the height of the movement, you were there. What kind of reports were you getting about Birmingham in 1963?
Well, whenever I spoke to African groups, everybody there had a great admiration for America. And that was one of the most difficult things. When the Civil Rights Movement came, Africans generally didn't know anything about segregation.
Right.
Let's say many. And no matter what I talked about to African audiences, they wanted to know the simple, fundamental fact. How could this have ever happened in this country we admired so much?
Sounds like they didn't understand the whole concept of racism.
Not at all.
It's totally foreign.
Yes. After all, they were, to put it mildly, in the majority.
Right, right.
They knew what colonialism was because they had been through it.
Right.
But
They didn't equate the two, though. They couldn't see the relationship. Now, what was Lagos like? I mean, it's
it was a big drive in the city.
yeah.
Yeah. It was right on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. And I lived out in the suburban area in a very nice fine house, about a half mile from the beach. It was a great life.
So if the job had been retained, you would have been there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The organization paid, I had servants and all.
Yes. Yes. Did you do any traveling through the continent while you were
I
there?
did, quite a bit.
Yeah.
I got particularly to Central Africa, what is now
Namibia?
Zimbabwe,
Yeah. Right.
and Central Africa,
Right.
what was in Nyasaland on the coast,
Right.
Kenya, Uganda.
Did you ever get to South Africa?
I couldn't get a passport, I tried.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't let you.
I was black.
That's right. Yeah. So you spent some very fun days in West Africa. Were there ever any discussions about the relationship between African Americans and Africans during that stay?
Not really, because there was a relative paucity of Africans who had ever been to the United States.
Right.
And very little I can recall.
While you were there, did you get to visit Ghana and Nkrumah?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And you were there then when Du Bois came into Nigeria. In fact, he died in Ghana
Yes.
in '63.
Yes.
Did you ever have the opportunity to meet him while he was there?
Right there.
Yeah. And when you came back to the States, what did you do? And why? What happened that
Well,
happened then?
I had a sister who came down to work for the Red Cross in Philadelphia. Deanie Drew, you know her.
Oh, sure.
And she had moved, came down here, the Red Cross during the war, Tuskegee, and worked there, and met John Drew, who's now dead, unfortunately, and they got married. I used to come up home all the time, you know, this back in the 50s,
Right.
begging me to come down and visit.
Right.
I said, I'll never set foot in that place. But I did, and that's really why I came. When I got back to Philadelphia after Africa, it just didn't seem exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
I moved here.
Did you come to visit Birmingham prior to going to Africa?
Yeah, no, never did.
Never.
After I came back, I came down, and that really sold me.
That's all right.
Playing golf and everything. It just integrated the golf course.
Right.
And I got to know quite a few people here.
How was the expectation? Were your expectations different than what you actually saw when you got here?
Now I'll tell you, another just great irony. I spent a week probably, evenings going to bars and things. waiting for somebody to say they weren't going to serve me.
Right,
Yes, sir, what can I get for you, you know? So it was a rather, I wasn't here in the bitter days.
right.
It was a drastic change.
Yeah. And talking with Deanie, she told me that when she initially made the decision to come to Tuskegee, that everyone just talked about it, said, well, why do you want to do that? And her father told her that she had been born free. Now she's going to Alabama. Did you get that same kind of lecture by friends and relatives? You did not. Yeah. That's interesting because even when I was coming back to Birmingham, people would say to me, well, why do you want to go back to Birmingham? And this is in the 70s. Because people still have that perception of the dogs and O'Connor and all. So you came back. Did you establish your own law firm at that time? Did you join a firm?
No, I started out as a sole practitioner, rented an office space in A.G. Gaston's building there on Fifth Avenue.
Fifth Avenue, right.
And got to know Oscar Adams. And he kept asking me about coming and joining him. He had a young wife with him at that time. And I kind of resisted for a while, but then I said maybe I should try it. So I did. I joined with Oscar, and then W. Clemon, a young fellow down at Columbia Law School. And he came with us when he finished law school. And we formed the firm, Adams, Baker, Clemon.
Yeah. And that was a pretty heavy firm. I mean, you were doing a lot of civil rights cases. Do you remember the first case that you did? The civil rights case?
Well, I got early on involved in the big case we had against U.S. Steel for employment discrimination.
Right.
And that may have been the first, but I'm not sure. I sued the YMCA. It was absolutely segregated.
Right, sure.
At the time.
Yeah.
Of course, that's no longer the case.
Right.
Who won that case?
Yeah. Tell me a little about the U.S. Steel case.
That was a really pitiful thing. You know, at that time, U.S. Steel was a big, booming company.
Right.
There were something like 13,000 employees out there. Nothing like that now.
Right.
Blacks were no exception. Occupied the lowest jobs in the pay scale. I mean, and you had such terrible things like a white man operates a crane, he gets paid very well. Well, he's sick, off vacation. Black fellow had a job, crane helper, which paid probably not a quarter of what he made. When white fellow's on vacation, sick, black fellow operated a crane. But when white fellow came back, and that job became open, that black fellow went out, hired a country boy, a white boy, and the black fellow taught him how to operate the crane.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And that was a pattern throughout the university.
Right. In many occupations they did that.
Always, over and over.
So what was the outcome of that?
Well, we finally won the case.
How long did it take you?
We must have had that case somewhere close to 10 years. Certainly 8 or 9.
Right.
Recollection serves me rightly. I think it was about 1972 that we finally resolved the case. Tried it before Judge Warner here.
Right.
This district court.
Right. So then that broke this whole employment.
Bad discrimination.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that in fact reverberated throughout all kinds of industries.
Oh, that's sure.
Right.
We had suits. Our firm, at least, I haven't been involved in all against U.S. Pipe.
Right.
Almost every industry around here.
Yes. So you basically developed a reputation as the firm that would take those kinds of cases.
Yes.
Yes. What about other black law firms. Were there other black law firms in town?
I don't know that there were any firms. There were not many black lawyers then.
Right.
Mason Davis
That's
had
right.
his own office. One or two lawyers with him. Or his own buildings. Maybe one or two others.
Yeah. So those we've been doing the movement. There were even fewer, of course.
Oh,
With,
yes.
and I guess by then, black lawyers started to develop and
Yes.
mature and then come back to Birmingham or whatever.
Yes,
But yes, that was an area that was really almost devoid.
yes.
But from your firm, though, it's rather interesting that you become the city attorney for Birmingham.
Yeah.
We have a Supreme Court justice and a federal judge from out of that law firm. That was rather significant. Now, some have suggested that of course, was great, and it moved, I guess, the movement forward, but some also suggested that it adversely affected the movement because it took out of that arena that firm that was doing the most for change. How would you respond to that?
Obviously, there's some truth to that. But it's also obvious that the whole idea was to get black lawyers integrated into the general practice of law. And there was no reason why white firms couldn't take discrimination cases, which they do now.
Right. Right.
I mean, not all, by no means all,
Sure.
but there are some, in fact, leading that arena. I think it is unfortunate, and Oscar, UW and I all talked about that, that after we broke up, that there was no black lawyers that carried the global fighting discrimination and segregation.
Right.
That's our firm had done.
Yes. Right.
And that it wasn't unfortunate, but I guess it's also good to know that some white lawyers saw that as a lucrative business and took it up.
Right. But then you're going into the city, that would put you in a new arena
Yes,
that would open up some other avenues, I'm sure.
yes.
Because you were the first black city attorney?
Yes, that's not right. There was one black in the department handling the municipal court cases. He went back to his hometown in Minneapolis. He's done very well there later. But that gave me the opportunity to, as you could do it. Civil service isn't easy. You get these white fellows, been there 20 years, 25, getting ready to retirement. They're not going to quit. So openings rarely occurred.
Right.
But as they did, I succeeded, of course, getting some black lawyers in the department.
Yeah. What was your the hardest thing for you to do with affecting change after you got to the city attorney's office? Was there anything that you wanted to do and that was just, very difficult?
Well, one thing I wanted to do was get some black lawyers in the city attorney's office. And that, for a while, became impossible because I couldn't get any movement in that department. But you understand that when I came, I was appointed by David Vann, who was then the mayor. And of course, when it came to matters of race, North Black Birmingham and David, you know that it wasn't difficult to work with him.
That's right.
On that. And the change in City Hall, appointment general, really began with David Vann.
That's right.
Yeah.
How did the other lawyers, those white lawyers that were there, accept you when you came in?
Dr. Honey, I'd have to say that I cannot remember though I expected having any difficulty at all. Like some lawyer refusing, talking about an assignment I gave him. I don't think I ever had that.
What year did you go in?
1978
And how long were you there?
until 1391,
91.
early 1991.
So were there, I know over time you saw change, a lot of
Yes.
change. Was there any significant change between the Van administration and the Arrington administration where doing your job was concerned? Were there, or was it very similar?
I think very similar. I don't think it was. Of course, Mary Anglin made a great number of changes in the sense of pushing to get black heads of departments. Which wasn't, again, not easy. Again, it's civil service. Those people hold on. They don't leave.
What is, excuse me, in working in the city attorney's office, what was your primary function?
Well, primarily, our function was to draft ordinances that the city council wanted, or the mayor wanted, represent the city council for passing, and to defend the city in lawsuits against the city.
As a
And to advise the department heads on legal questions that arose in the department.
right. I want to go back just a bit. Tell me, and I failed to ask this question earlier about your experiences in Lagos. What were your actual duties
Oh,
there?
as I said, the purpose of the organization was to establish black minds. There was a black culture.
Right.
One of the big things was to bring people, blacks, from America over. Langston Hughes, for instance. Jacob Lawrence, well-known artist who exhibited, was here last year, a couple of years ago. Civil rights people come over and talk to Africans. Africans didn't understand how this could happen in America.
Yeah.
And I was amazed at that.
Yeah, that's very
And
interesting.
those Africans, of course, who had been here, went to Lincoln, they knew.
Right.
But mass of Africans just couldn't contemplate, couldn't believe 63 demonstrations on how this thing could happen. Great free liberal.
Right. How were you accepted by Africans as a black American?
I think very well. I never had any trouble. For instance, when I spent some time up in Accra, in Ghana, H.A.B. Jones Corty was teaching at the university. He was a classmate of mine at Lincoln. In fact, that's how I got my appointment with Clemon, whom I hadn't seen since Lincoln.
Yeah. Those, I'm sure that was a real highlight in your life, that those 5 years just being there. There have been many, well, I've gone to West Africa, and one of the things that I saw in West Africa was poverty. And I was just astounded because I'd never seen poverty like that. And I actually came back and said, we do not have poverty in this country in relationship to that. Did you witness that in Nigeria?
There's some slum sections. Did you go to Lagos?
No, I didn't go to Nigeria at all.
There's some terrible slum areas in Lagos.
There was a family out in Oklahoma, Simmons family, that were in oil, and they had a relationship with Nigeria, I believe. Don Simmons is his name. It was one of his sons' name, and his father's name was Jake Simmons. uh, Jake was very close to Ezekwe, and he had a business relationship with them, and he would have been there probably around the same time that you were there. And there's a book on him. But they were originally from Alabama, and during the Trail of Tears, they were their grandfather's. His name was Cal Tom, and he was an interpreter for the Creek Nation, and that's the way they got to Oklahoma from Alabama, and they developed into oil out there, and had a very close relationship in Nigeria, I think, and several other countries. And I was wondering if you had ever.
No, I didn't. It's one of the most personal pleasures I had in all of Nigeria. I went up to eastern Nigeria, really because I wanted to talk some with them Ezekwe. And I was, I guess, absolutely, I was so pleased. He knew me. He knew me as a football player. He was an African, didn't he? Ezekwe went to when he was 30s. I graduated in 41.
Right.
But he knew all about football exports. And it was one of the most pleasurable things.
Yeah. How much time did you spend with him?
Oh, I guess I must have been about 2 or 3 hours.
All right.
And we got back to Lagos. I gave a big reception party at a very nice house out there. Big, spacious lawn. And Zeke was still president of Nigeria then. And I invited he and his wife. And at the last moment, his wife called me and said he thought he had better not. Things were, Nigeria was split terribly along tribal lines.
Right.
And I mean, the people in Lagos, the ruling class were generally Yorubas. And God, I've had Yoruba people speak to me in the most demeaning fashion about Ezekwe. Obviously one of the prominent leaders of the whole independent.
Right.
I never could understand that.
Yeah. Was he evil?
He was evil.
Yes.
And Eagles were very independent minded. They tried to create their own independent state.
Right.
Like the Biafran situation.
Yeah, that's right.
Was successful.
Yeah. But that's an interesting piece there, because here in this country, we always look at everything being black and white.
Yeah.
In the African nations, the different ethnic groups of people.
Yes.
And we don't understand that. Many times we have not been able to understand that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, as you know, in Nigeria, the most accommodating people, the British rulers, were the Hausas in the north.
Right.
So, independence, yes. People like Ezekwe, who was an evil and untold number of Yorubas, actually led that movement. Hausas were the most accommodating people.
Right.